Let's talk about a little interesting guy, a curious boy by the name of Byron Daniels. Byron Daniels is a U.S. House Representative member representing Florida's 19th district. And Byron Daniels is a black congressman, one of the few black congressional congressmen, and one of the even fewer Republican black congressmen in Congress today. Byron Daniels is a very curious man. Byron Daniels loves Donald Trump with all of his heart, and he's doing anything possible to make sure that Donald Trump gets elected into office. Anything at all, even praising Jim Crow for black people and how they were actually a little better off in Jim Crow. But before we get there, I'd like to talk a little bit about what Byron Daniels has been up to for this last little while. I said Byron Daniels loves Donnie Trumpy. He's a big Trump gagger. And so Byron Daniels has been taking time away from his own re-election campaign this year to help the re-election of Donald Trump back into the presidency so he can hopefully become the God King Emperor of the United States and he gets a cozy job in the administration, and then parlay onto like a lobbying gig that'll pay him money for making the world a worse place. Normal conservative, normal politician things. Byron Daniels has been spending time doing one thing and one thing specifically, trying to get black people around the country to realize that Democrats aren't good for them and that Republicans, specifically Donald Trump, should be their new king, the new king of the blacks, and how they should all come out to vote for him this year. So he's been holding black meetings, black fundraising events, black voter outreach events in specific states, especially the Rust Belt, to be able to get black people out to vote for Donald Trump and get them registered and to talk about how black people should be voting more Republican, how Republicans actually have black people's interests in mind. We all know that's wrong by the fact that Donald Trump, a guy who's actually been convicted of being racist against black people by not giving them housing back in the 90s, talking about how he doesn't like black dudes counting his money. Like, this is not a good guy who called for the execution of the Central Park Five. This guy's a horrible guy for black people, but Byron Daniels loves him. And he's been hosting events that he calls Cognac, Cigars, and Congress. And Cognac, Cigars, and Congress is this meeting where he tries to lure in black people to talk about, lures in black people to try to get them to be Republican by offering them cigars and alcohol, because the only way they can be receptive to Republican talking points is apparently by being drunk first. So he's got to loosen them up a little bit. But while he's been doing that, and while he's been on the campaign trail for Donald Trump, he's been saying some very, very strange things. Trump surrogate reached out to black voters in Philly with cigars and cognac. So this is Byron Daniels himself here, and this is his buddy. I don't know what's his name. Wesley Hunt. This is Wesley Hunt, one of the other black conservative guys, right? Byron Daniels, Wesley Hunt. Byron Daniels, actually, if you're wondering why he's slobbering on Trump so much, one of the big reasons actually is because he's on the short list for Donald Trump's running mates. I think he's going to go with like a brown guy this time, or a brown person this time, specifically to try to reach out to brown voters to trick them into voting for him right before he tries to take their rights away. But I want to read some of this because it's really interesting. He was during this cigars, cognac, and Congress, which is, for a moment, I know I've been talking about it a bit, but it's so funny to me. How can I get black people to want to come out to talk to me? Yeah, I gotta give them alcohol. It's cigars. That's it. That's what'll do it. That's what we blacks like. At one point during the discussion, Tafoya asked Donalds about the differences between how black men and women view politics. Polls show that Trump support among black voters is largely just among men. Yeah, there's something wrong with a lot of black guys out there. I hate to say it, but it's true. He responded with one of the craziest statements I've ever heard in my entire life, but here this is, okay? Let me read this out to you verbatim. I promise you these are actually his written words. Quote, "First of all, there's a difference between men and women anyways. Men have been created by God to be conquerors, to be hunters, and that's who they are. And so a black man in today's America is looking around and saying, how can I hunt for my people and for my family? And they're looking at Joe Biden, what Joe Biden has done, saying, I can't hunt. He took my spear. He took my bow." I honestly, this is so true. I leave my girlfriend in the car and I walk in. I walk into fucking. I walk into my local Walmart barefoot with a leopard pelt on my ass, tied with like a piece of twine. I combat roll into the Walmart. Yeah, bologna. Milk. Eggs. He's like a villain that needs to get captured by like the gang and Scooby Doo. You know what I mean? The gang hop out of the fucking mystery machine and wrap this guy up. There's a net covered by cigars on the floor, and he goes over to get another hit of cognac. He's already drunk as fuck. They catch him up. They rip the mask off of him, and it's just fucking Mitch McConnell. I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for. McConnell, you okay? You good? He just start 1,000-yard stare right after that. He said black women may also turn against the Democratic Party because of, yup, you guessed it, transgenders. They said, quote, black women are looking at their sons saying, now wait a minute, you telling me that my son can become a girl? Nope, you're telling me my son and my daughter who need an education now have to go and be less than because of illegal immigrants in the city of Philadelphia? Nope. What are you saying? What do you even refer? Why did trans people do these people genuinely have trans people on their minds every single day, man? It actually blows my mind. They remember that research that people did? They were tracking how much the word trans gets brought up in conservative and liberal spaces on Twitter and Facebook, and conservatives talk about trans people like 3 times more than trans people talk about trans people. They actually can't help themselves. Number of Facebook interactions earned on top performing content about trans issues by source type. Queer people, 10 million. Left-leaning, 2.6. Non-aligned, 6.8. Right-leaning, 44.3. Right? Conservatives talk about trans people more than every other group of people combined, and double that, and it's still more. They rent-free. Donalds said he's starting to see the rejuvenation of the black family, which he described as younger people forming nuclear family units by helping to breathe the revival of the black middle class in America. He went on to say that those family values had previously been eroded by Democratic policies that black voters embraced after becoming loyal to the party due to the civil rights movement. And this is where it starts to get a little saucy. I would advise you to strap in, because he starts to go. He's gonna run us off a cliff here. Okay, so be careful. Quote, you see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative. Black people had always been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively, he said. And when H.E.W. Lyndon Johnson, you go down the road, and now we are where we are. He added, referring to the former U.S. Department of Health and Education and Welfare. The so-called Great Society program, spearheaded by former President Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s, included civil rights legislation, the creation of Medicare and also Medicaid, just so you know, food stamps and other welfare and other housing programs. So when he's saying things like food stamps, housing programs, the expansion, Medicare and Medicaid, drove black people away from each other, and that's why we were just better under Jim Crow. And before these uppity Democrats came to ruin everything, we were all vibing under Jim Crow, and black people were better than we've ever been under Jim Crow, you see, which is dumb as shit. It's so wrong. It's so incorrect. I don't even know where to begin. But let's start here. During Jim Crow, black people were just getting randomly hung. During Jim Crow, black people were kept out of forming wealth, and wealth was being stolen from them, i.e. the Tulsa race riots and other and other riots across the country. It's even hard to name them all. There's so hundreds of racist terrorist attacks against black people during that time that I can't even bring them up all up off the top of my head right now. One thing that he's saying is true. and that is that the marriage rate of people who got married, black people who got married in the United States, was higher when Jim Crow and segregation was around. In the late 1800s to early and mid 1900s, black people were actually more likely to get married than white people were, right? There's a chart, and don't listen. It starts at 15. I'm just telling you what I read. Starting it from how they describe it, females from age 15 to I believe 25, a black and white. If you compare them during that time, those black girls were more likely to be married than those white girls. Were more likely to marry than those white girls specifically. They're also more likely to be widows. They're also more likely to be separated as well, but they were more likely to, for one, get married. All right. But that changed over time, and definitely after 1960, the black single rate and the black divorce rate skyrocketed. Right. We all know that this is true. How black people are less likely than white people to get married, to stay married, and to be at any point in time be in like a 2-parent household or just have a partner. Okay, well, this is true. But that doesn't mean that black people or black families were better under Jim Crow. I think dramatically not. They were poorer, more likely to be killed, less likely to have food on the table, less likely to get educated, more likely to be victims of racist abuse, violence, all those types of things. They're way more likely to have a horrible life than black people of today, right? Even if we're less likely to be married and stay married. All right, even if the divorce rate is so high, even if we have other problems when it comes to family, saying that under Jim Crow, black families were better is ridiculous if the only thing you care about is the fact that people were married. But even back then, let me remind you, if you got married, it was near impossible to divorce. Divorce, like no fault divorce, and divorce laws were basically non-existent in the United States before 1960. If you got married, guess what? You didn't get divorced. You just stopped talking. The man just walked out of the house and then just never came back. All right. But on paper, don't worry, you're still married. And that's what Byron Donalds really cares about. As long as the paper still says you're married, then we can help wrangle in what is going on with all these. Babe, what's happening here? But there are also other cultural reasons for why the black marriage rate was lower, and I personally believe probably will always be lower than the white marriage rate, specifically because I think white communities in this country have really unhealthy marriage practices. I mean, especially back in the day, white couples, they didn't get divorced, they just killed each other. I mean, especially if you're from the South and you know, like if you have a couple white friends, you've probably heard of them talk about a story about where one of their like someone in their family at some point in time like killed their like spouse, and that's just how it was. There's also the fact that shotgun marriages are a big thing. Now, if you don't know what a shotgun marriage is specifically, a shotgun marriage is a shotgun marriage is a marriage for which you get pregnant. The woman gets pregnant, where you two know each other, and you just are forced to marry, or you're either forced to marry culturally or forced to marry like you're like literally her like brothers and or dad comes to your like finds you with a gun and then forces you at gunpoint to marry that girl after that point, right? And so yes, you are technically married. Is that a healthy marriage? No, but once again, those are one of those like cohabitation marriages. You all are married, but you're just living in the same house. You're not actually married. You don't love each other anymore. You may not even loved each other to begin with. Those things never really took off in the black community. All right, after slavery and black people and their families that we made were no longer just tools for white people to be able to get more free slaves, or to like sell off, to like settle debts or anything to other slave drivers, and black people could just marry each other and love each other without the fear, the specter of like a slave driver tearing your family apart, or enslaving your children. or you were being forced to make children, black people got together and they formed relationships, as you would imagine. But then white people still terrorize those relationships, and they still do to this very day, right? That was a really big thing. But no, black people were not, and all those reasons kind of combined, in the freedom to make relationships and get out of relationships being the case, means that black people were just less likely to marry over time, especially when, and what he's referring to was true. Yeah, the civil rights movement came around and black people married less, but what he's leaving out is that everybody married less. Everybody is marrying less these days. They're marrying less and later. And also black men are more likely to die before we turn 25. And so that's why the men to women ratio in the black community is much higher than even other racial and ethnic groups in the country, because black men just are less likely to make it to marriage age than white men or Hispanic men or Asian men do usually, or they're more likely to be the victims of over policing, more likely to be the victims of laws that are put into place to help criminalize drug use and put them in jail for years and years. Mass incarceration also made it more difficult for those for black people to form relationships again, back into bondage, right? From the plantation to the prison cell, just like that. And so these, and also, black women, usually due to racism and other issues, usually make around the same amount of money that black men do, or the gap between black men and black women is was never as stark as the gap between white men and white women. So white women were also really forced to marry white men, usually because they were going to be destitute either way. Anyways, right? They weren't able to make a bank account. They weren't able to get a credit card. They weren't able to live a normal life. They were literally locked out of having a normal life until they got a husband. That's what life for white women were like, because they were property, right? Their property, right? They weren't able to own black people in general as property anymore, and they just turned to the last property that they all communally owned, which was white women. And so white women were forced to marry more, but black women just weren't forced to marry more. That there just wasn't that forceful cultural and legal pressure to marry when it comes to black women than white women. So that's why our likelihood of marrying each other is also less. And also, one last thing, because I know I'm listing a lot of things, but Byron Donalds is just a stupid fuck. So that's why. Okay, that's why I'm listing so many things. The one last thing is those Great Society programs were also helping the reason why marriages go down, because once again, when men have kids with women, and then they walk out of the house, or something else happens to them, and women have to take care of those kids more likely than not, then they're less likely to want to be forced, that feel like they're forced to marry, because they don't rely on a guy to provide that the money coming in, food coming in. There's less of a risk that they'll starve to death without a man in the house. And so Byron Donalds wants to do one of two things, okay? Forcefully change society that we marry each other when we're not ready to, or we can't, or make it so that women have to choose between getting with a guy they don't want to marry, or them and their children starving to death, which I think is a disgusting world to live in. But at the end of the day, that's what you have to do to really change this trajectory on marriage, outside of more liberal and left-wing and leftist policies, like making society less atomized and getting away from the need for work for your capitalist overlords and everything. But that's not a conversation that he's ready for at all, right? To separate, to get business out of our lives and have more time for us to spend times with our friends and family and form those relationships, and stop making places that require you to dump money into to stay in, or like loitering is also loitering laws are also a bit of a problem too. But that, once again, long talk. That's a talk for another day. Okay. Is this also why they're heavily against interracial couples? Insecurity over owning white women was what drove a lot of lynchings back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right? And that's why one of the number one claims against like black people were that they committed some wrong against white women, right? And why they like in those lynching photos they love to like cut off the penises of the black men that they were killing and torturing, right, to like emasculate them because they were scared that black men were gonna take all their girls.
Yeah, baby, that's what I've been waiting for.
And yeah, that plays into why they don't like interracial marriage a bit too, yeah. And so everybody obviously started to get on this guy's neck for what he said, and they absolutely deserve to get on his neck for what he said. They absolutely deserve to clown on this guy. He's an absolute disgusting freak. Who said that? We're talking about Byron Donalds right now. Byron Donalds. Hakeem Jeffries stood up in the House to roast him.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow.
I'm going to be honest with you. Hakeem Jeffries is kind of nerd-pilled. He kind of looks like a nerd. I don't like his voice very much. That's just me. But also that once again, that's just me. This has nothing to do with his politics. I don't like his politics either, but he's a bit nerd-pilled. He's like Barack Obama's nerdy little brother. You know what I mean? He kind of has negative riz. I don't want to be that guy, but he really does kind of have negative riz. He's a bit of a dweeb. Madam Speaker. Okay, buddy. I'm sorry.
That's an outlandish, outrageous, and out-of-pocket observation. We were not better off when a young boy named Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow.
That's true. True and real. Right, true and real, true and real. Who is Byron Donalds? Who is this Byron Donalds clown? Who, as a black man, praised the Jim Crow era? Obviously too young to remember. He said he said black people then had family values. Where do you find these people? I was here during that time. I just come to America in 1959. Okay, they go on the back in my day. Okay. I was born in 1959, lived in Ohio, and went to a mixed school with black families, and they did have better family values. And most of them had fathers in the home. Byron Donalds is a good man, and his family has lived through this, and he knows what he's talking about. Came here in 1959, saw enormous struggle. I boxed in the ghetto of Compton. I had friends with black fathers, with friends with black fighters. Played soccer. Oh my lord! Oh, the yapping's crazy. I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, I'm consent. So don't tell me about this. Yeah, this idea that so he's also touching on like a racist idea that black people are way more degenerate or something now, don't have family values. No, they don't have his values. Okay, he doesn't have his values of making women more property and trying to force marriages when they don't need to happen. One thing that he won't tell you is that even though black men and white men have different rates of being married and staying married, black men are more likely than white men to spend more time with their kids when they're not married. So this means that black men spend more time reading to their children. Black men spend more time giving like time and love and care to their children than white and Hispanic men do on average. There was a study about this. Actually, those black men, when they have time to give to their kids, they absolutely do. And black people just are more likely to have families that look different than the white picket fence, married, 2.5 kids, American, like 1959 commercial fake advertiser family that you would imagine your conservatives think of these days when they think of families. They have family units. Black people's families are incredibly strong. I'm not sure if I have a couple black people in here. Your families are pretty strong. You probably have big families big extended families where you all know each other, and if you need something, you could probably stay over at a family member's house, or you go to like a big cookout, or the next time you go to a party, the party's huge and filled with people who come up to you and be like, I remember, oh, you're so big now, I remember you when you were a kid. Black people have family values. Black people have big, healthy families, just not the same exact families that Byron Donalds has, as he tries to force black people to fit into white people's mold of exactly what a family should look like in the United States. I say no, right? And this is not to say that black people don't have problems with family. We all have problems when it comes to our families, absolutely. But to say that we're so much worse at forming families, we have no family values. I'm sorry, black people were more likely to vote for Republicans. They were not more likely to vote for conservatives, okay? Conservatives back in the day were those racist Democrats trying to vote David Duke into those racist Democrats trying to vote David Duke into Congress, okay? That was the party that Byron Donalds would be a part of, not the Republican Party today. Absolutely not the Republican Party today. The Republican Party today is nothing like the Republican Party post-slavery in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Absolutely nothing like it today. He's a clown to say otherwise. Okay. And so obviously Broseph was roasted. Obviously bro was completely throttled when it came to this when it came to saying that black people were better under Jim Crow. So I want to take a look at some of his news appearances afterwards, because obviously he wanted to come on and kind of clear his name a little bit about what he said about Jim Crow, because things aren't looking too good for him, and he's worried that he's going to be disinvited from the cookout. So let's take a look. This was his appearance on CNN the other day.
One of Donald Trump's vice presidential contenders, Congressman Byron Donalds, he made some comments that has a lot of you talking and a lot of Democrats fired up. I'm going to speak with him live in just a couple of minutes, but here are the original remarks. They were made as a part of a pitch to black voters in Philadelphia, and I want you to hear it in its full context. Listen.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you. Wow. I don't know what happened. I wasn't. Wow. But I'm gonna tell you.
Are you saying wow? Bro said, I love my dad. Wow. Wow. Is this his personal hype man over here? I woke up this morning. I drank some water. Wow. Wow. What's happening? Wow. Wow. Oh man. He brought his hype man in here to he's on the mood.
The one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to my son.
Wow.
So one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of black families with younger black men and black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together.
Oh no.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then H.E.W., Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries, it's Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids? It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth.
Now, we should note that many Democrats who jumped on Donalds today claimed that he said that blacks were, quote, better off. As you heard there, he didn't use those exact words in the clip, but the congressman joins me now to talk about that. Congressman, thank you for being here. I want to just...
Even though he didn't say that exactly, he was saying aspects of black people's lives were better off under Jim Crow, and I also disagree with that. Black families were not better off under Jim Crow. Absolutely not. And they were also not more conservative. Well, not... Everybody was more conservative than today, sure, but compared to the time that they were in, they were not more conservative. Really, no. Is he divorced? Actually, I don't know. He's not divorced. He is married. He is married, actually. Yeah, he's married. He's married. And this is his wife. This is his wife. Beautiful, beautiful black wife. Okay.
Just focus on really the substance of what you were saying or trying to say in that clip. What did you mean by black families were more together during Jim Crow?
Frankly, what that is about the empirical fact that before the Great Society, before Lyndon Johnson's policies, there was more black families united. The marriage rate in black America was significantly higher before the Great Society. The period of time that coincides with that, obviously, is Jim Crow era. And then after the Great Society, the marriage rate in the black community plummeted significantly. The Great Society is a part of that reason, not completely, but it's definitely a part of that. And what you're seeing right now in America is a reformation of black families in America. That's a good thing, not only for the black community and for black families, but it's also a good thing for the country.
So what was the point of tying together the black family and Jim Crow specifically? I mean, Jim Crow, as you know, was a period of racial segregation, of racial terror. Why would you make that connection?
All I was doing was referring to the time periods when you talk about the historical timelines in America and coinciding with black families and what the marriage rate in black families are. The overarching point is obviously talking about what polling shows today, that about 25% of the black vote, depending on what poll you're looking at, is leaning towards supporting Republicans and supporting President Trump. The corollary to that is that when you...
So here's the thing, like, even there are some polls that show that. There have been polls that have shown that type of stuff during 2020, and that didn't work out either. So the likelihood of that happening, once again, I think is very low. I think Donald Trump will probably max out at 15% of the black vote. And I think that'd be pushing it. I don't think he's getting 20% of the black vote, personally. I haven't seen any information to say that like any of those polls will actually be will hold, and the higher ranked pollsters don't show those numbers. they don't show those numbers. They don't show those numbers. He's gagging right now so he can be the VP, so he can be a VP pick. There's a couple names on there that he's fighting for, so he wants to be top Trump gagger. Top Trump gagger. It's a hard fight though. You know, there are big Trump gaggers out there, you know. Hard-working Trump gaggers who've spent the last 8 years honing their craft. Honing their craft.
Family unit, husband and wife, living together, working together, thriving together. You're raising your kids. Your thought process is now talking about building generational wealth. What am I leaving to my children? What kind of communities do I want my children to come up in? What are the educational opportunities? What's going on with the economy? How does, and then to a broader level, how does foreign policy and all these other public policy issues flow into that? And so when you compare the terrible agenda of Joe Biden and what that's done to families in America, coinciding with the fact that you are seeing a reformation of black families in America today, which is an absolutely wonderful thing and needs to continue.
You know what's really stupid is that he's sitting here saying Joe Biden has destroyed the black family with his horrible economic policy. Also, black people are forming families better than they ever have today under Joe Biden. So which one is it? Is it Joe Biden has obliterated the black family? Or is it that Joe Biden has produced the environment for where black people have now been forming families at a better rate since Jimothy Crowington? Like, come on. Are you even thinking about what you're saying? He's not even saying anything. You're right. He's just making his mouth move. So because just so you know, everybody who's on CNN, they have a timer. They can see how long they have to talk. So he's just gonna fill up words until it's time for him to get off. And he had a couple more seconds there until that was the end of the segment. But that wasn't it. He came back. He came back again for this. All right. One more once again. And to talk the one more once again, and Al Sharpton even had a little talk with him. Al Sharpton had a talk with him. Is it Faith? Is that her name? From MSNBC?
Some recent comments by Florida Congressman Byron Donalds have been condemned by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, the Congressional Black Caucus, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison, and the president of the NAACP, Derek Johnson, just to name a few.
He had the whole Black Council come out against this man. Come out against him. That's so funny. Everybody was like, yeah, we don't like this guy. We don't like what this guy's up to.
In those comments at an event designed to help Republican outreach.
Byron Donalds, so shitty, he brings the entire black community together.
To black voters in Philadelphia earlier this week, Congressman Donalds made what certainly seemed like positive comments about the Jim Crow era. And he claims his critics are missing the context of what he said. So here's the context.
Listen to it. Here's
what you posted on your social media. The Florida Republican Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman, thank you for being here. We played that lengthy segment. That is what you posted on your social media. The part of what you said that people take issue with is this line, which I'm going to read back to you again. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative. Black people have always been conservative minded, but black people voted conservatively. But it is that during Jim Crow, the black family was together. That's what people have taken issue with. What are they missing?
I hope that they do this. I'm not sure that they will. But what they need to do is say that what he's implicitly saying is that the Jim Crow era was better for black families than the post-Jim Crow Great Society era of Lyndon B. Johnson. And the Civil Rights Act as well. That's what he's implying, right? Well, that's what he's implying. He's not saying it specifically, but that's what he's implying. The Great Society destroyed the black families. Under Jim Crow, the black families were better. You're implicitly saying that Jim Crow is better for black families. Will you defend that?
Missing.
Frankly, what's really happened is that you have, Democrats and you have the Biden campaign, and some of the media want to twist my words for political purposes. The overarching issue is talking just about black families and why you're seeing a trend of black people leaning towards Republicans in this election cycle and probably in election cycles to come. And part of that, is that when you're raising families, raising kids, etc., you're now thinking about all of the public policy issues, all of the economic issues, all of the education issues. And that's leading people to have
Yeah, man, they didn't think about that during Jim Crow. Yeah, black families, they didn't think about all those policy and societal issues back when they were building families under Jim Crow, you see. Much different. Much different. Well, it wasn't as bad or something. That's why they were able to form families better, you see.
Divergence in political thoughts. That was the only point. The stuff that comes up about Jim Crow and twisting my words, saying I was being nostalgic or saying that Jim Crow was good for black people, that's all political spin. It's a lie. It's gaslighting. And that's truly unfortunate.
So here's the challenge, Congressman. You started out talking about your family, talking about your mom, talking about being raised, and you on your own brought up Jim Crow. In fact, you said Jim Crow 3 times for emphasis. It wasn't the media or the Democrats or gaslighters who brought up Jim Crow. It was you. You brought up Jim Crow. So why did you use Jim Crow specifically as your reference? You did that. No one else did that. You did it.
Oh, I did. We were having a conversation, just talking as, Black people in Philadelphia. But if you're going to use the chronological timeline of America before the Great Society and Lyndon Johnson's time period, you had, unfortunately, the Jim Crow era in America. During that time period, the marriage rates of Black Americans was significantly higher than any other time since then in American history. So it is a divergence if you're talking about marriage rates in the Black community. They have plummeted. And what we've seen recently in America, which is a very good thing we should all celebrate, is that the marriage rates in the Black community are rising again. That's good for Black families. That's definitely good for Black children. It's something I want to see. I'm quite sure you want to see it as well.
Okay, let's talk about that. Jim Crow lasted roughly from 1867 after the Civil War to 1968. Is there a specific period between 1867 and 1968 that you thought was this golden era for Black families, or a time that was good for Black families?
Joy, I never said that. And see, this is where the gaslighting comes in.
I'm going to read what you said.
All I was talking about was the marriage rates.
Stop. No,
Joy,
that's not what you said. Let's play what you said. Play what he said. Play what he said.
Families. You're saying I said the golden era. I never said that.
I'm going to play what you said.
I said that it was better for Black families. I never said that.
Play what he said.
Play what I said.
Play what he said.
Oh, here. Why was you yapping so far when you finally finish off with the play what I said?
During Jim Crow, the Black family was together. That's right. During Jim Crow, more Black people were not just conservative, because Black people are always a bit conservative-minded, but more Black people voted conservatively. And then H.E.W., Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are.
Okay, so now I'm going to go back.
Yeah, so what he's literally saying is that Lyndon B. Johnson destroyed the Black family. The Black family was, but he's going to be like, oh, I never said better off. More marriage to him is better off. He thinks less marriage is worse off. So better marriage, so more marriage has to be better off. And when were they better off? Jim Crow. He's trying to politician weasel, debate bro, weasel his way out of this one. You can't weasel your way out of this one. Just if you really want to do that, just admit it. Just admit, I said that. Yeah, I said it, and I'm gonna stand by it. Don't weasel your way out of it. Just stand by it if those are your real words, because they are your real words. That's what you believe.
You said during Jim Crow, the Black family was together. What was the authority of the Black father in the Black family during Jim Crow?
Well, listen, under Jim Crow, obviously, Black people were under great persecution, unfortunately, by Southern Democrats and the Democrat Party overall in the history of our country. That's the fact. And so
the dang Democrats did this to me.
And so having the Black man in the home was about first protecting the mom and protecting the kids. Incredibly important. It was the leadership in the home, which is incredibly valuable. And I think what we're witnessing, obviously, the last 30 years, definitely through my generation, is Black fathers being at home is incredibly important for the success of Black children going forward. And it's not just a Black thing, that's everybody. Fathers in home help to breed success for kids moving forward. That is a great thing for our country. That's something that should
be him spinning off to save his ass.
Time. So what I'm talking about is not the golden era of Jim Crow. That's ridiculous. I would never say that.
No, he said golden era of Black fam. She said, well, listen, play what she said. The golden era of Black families.
That I'm standing up to, because that's what Hakeem Jeffries, the Biden campaign, Jamie Harrison, and the like are trying to bring up. And unfortunately, the media has followed suit with misleading headlines, and that's wrong.
Now I'm going to talk. Do I have a chance? Good. Now, you talked about the Black father being... the black father being in the family, being able to protect the family. First, I want to read just for our audience the definition of Jim Crow, just so we all know what we're talking about. Jim Crow laws were a collection of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation. They existed essentially from the post-Civil War era. They were meant to marginalize African Americans by denying them the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, and other opportunities. Those who attempted to defy Jim Crow laws often faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and death. Now I want to talk about something that happened during this era. You said that what you were talking about was the presence of the black father in the home to protect his wife and family. In 1943, in the state that you represent, in Florida, a young man named Willie James Howard, who was 15 years old, was lynched. During Christmas of 1943, Willie Howard sent cards to all of his coworkers at the Van Priest dime store in Live Oak, Florida. Unlike the other cards, Willie's card to Cynthia Goff, a white store employee, revealed a youthful crush. His greeting expressed hope that white people would someday like black people and concluded, "I love your name, I love your voice. For SH, sweetheart, you are my choice." After reading the card, Cynthia's father, Phil Goff, brought two friends to the Howard home and demanded to see Willie. Despite his mother's pleading, the men dragged Willie away and then kidnapped Willie's father, James Howard, from work. The men drove the two Howards, to the embankment of the Suwannee River, bound Willie's hands and feet, stood him at the edge of the water, and told him to either jump or be shot. Willie jumped into the cold water below and drowned while his father was forced to watch at gunpoint. Willie's dead body was pulled from the river the next day. You said that during the Jim Crow era,
he's seething.
The importance of having a black man in the home was to protect his family and to protect his wife. I actually spoke with somebody who lived through Jim Crow. Her name is Merle Evers Williams. And Merle quoted to me a man named Charles Silberman, who wrote in Crisis in Black and White, that in 1890, the year that the Mississippi Constitution was written, the policy of crushing out the manhood of the Negro citizens was to be carried out with success. So the man in the home during Jim Crow had no rights, could not protect his wife from rape, could not protect his son from lynching. So again, why would you quote that era and say that at that time, the family all being in the home together was something we should think of as a good thing?
Well, first of all, Joy, the story you bring up and you're bringing up is a tragedy. Oh, no. One of the great tragedies of the Jim Crow era. This is why those policies they were disgusting and distasteful. All I was talking about, Joy, was the benefit of a man in the
family. Again, sir, I'm sorry, I let you talk for a long time. Sorry, talk over you. You've gotten a chance to speak a lot, Congressman. You're going to answer my question now and not filibuster. This is the question you want. This is the question you need.
No, he's definitely filibustering here.
To answer.
That's what I'm trying to answer. That's what I'm trying to answer, Joy.
Give me a second. Take a breath. Take a breath. If a black man could not protect,
not her trying to imply that he's an angry black man. Well, Joy Behar, calm down. Sorry, not Joy Behar. Sorry, I'm racist. Joy Reid, calm down. Calm down, Joy Reid. She's like, take a breath, slow down. Well, don't get mad at me, black man, angry black man. Yo, what's going on at NSNBC?
It's my show. If a black man, a black father, could not protect his wife, his son, or himself from lynching and violence, how is him being in the home mean that is an era that was better for the black family, or that we should think of as a good thing?
That's a much better way to ask that question. But I feel I don't like this question, right? I like that she's cooking him. I don't really like this question that much. There are problems with this question that still lets him like weasel out of it, right? I still really think that she should bring up the fact that he implicitly is saying that the Jim Crow era was better for black families because they were more together, or that's his like modus operandi for when it comes to his wants for the black family outside of voting for Donald Trump is for marriage to be better. And so any era where marriage was better is better than today, specifically because they were together in and of themselves, no matter what was going on the outside. Right. Which is his belief. unless he wants to say something different. And if that's the case, then he absolutely can recant that. And I would like him to recant that if that's the case, or deny that. I'd love for that to be the case. But I'm not sure if he's going to do that. Let's see.
First of all, Joy, I never said that it was better for black people in Jim Crow. I have never said that. And even my own words say that. If you're talking about the importance of black fathers in the home, or frankly, all fathers in the home, it is always for the betterment of children to have leadership. Yes, for safety. So having two people in the home to help provide the economic needs for those children so the family can succeed. That is a wonderful thing. We should always get back to that, not to Jim Crow. And this is the point of the gaslighting and the lying that is occurring with what I said. Don't try to impose the fact that the marriage rates were better in the higher, I want to be clear, higher in the Jim Crow era to mean that I think Jim Crow is great. That is a lie. That is gaslighting. I would never say such a thing, which is why the Jim Crow era was destructive of black people.
Right. Okay. He was making the rounds getting roasted. Absolutely making the rounds. Absolutely making the rounds. Really funny. Yeah, and nobody's even brought up the fact that he was like, nobody's even brought up the fact yet that he was like, black people voted more conservatively during Jim Crow, during that era when a lot of black people weren't even allowed to vote, for one. And even if they did vote, they were voting for Democrats. They were voting for Republicans more, usually, but they were not voting for the conservatives in either party very much at all, actually. Because those conservatives were usually racist because they were trying to conserve racism. It's just like the conservatives today, only they were definitely worse. But yeah, they were trying to conserve racism. What does he think the conservatives were trying to conserve back during Jim Crow? What was that? I just want to know. I'm just curious. I'm just curious what he thought that was. What did they conserve during Jim Crow? What do they want to keep in place? It's a curious question. It's a curious question. Very curious question. There's one more here where he got brought on. I believe he spoke to Al Sharpton, and they were having a ball with this man on MSNBC. I'm telling you, they were roasting him. The whole week was just MSNBC hosts roasting Byron Donalds over and over again. It was really funny.
Indeed. Your eyes and ears do not betray you, Simone. That was Republican Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida romanticizing the Jim Crow era last week. His remarks met with swift pushback from Democratic leadership, but the congressman says his words were taken out of context. Last night, Donalds joined our colleague, Reverend Al Sharpton, for a debate on the matter. Take a look.
I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But look, you were born in Brooklyn. You went down into the South, went to Florida State. You have an interracial marriage. You're the congressman of a district that's not a black district. I mean, how can you even live with yourself acting like Jim Crow was a good era or better era for blacks? What happened to you?
Okay, that's real cute. That's real cute. I did not say that. And I'm not going to sit here and insinuate that against you. Because right now you're lying about what I said. I did say Jim Crow. I did reference it 3 times.
Okay, wait, chat. Let me know. Let me know, okay? Let me know. We could watch this one, right? Watch the rest of this, or there's some guy. I just found him. He's called LFR Family. He's a YouTuber who was saying that we could kind of react to some black YouTuber slobbering on Byron Donalds, and we can see what's going on there. That's some dense rot. Oh, there's rot everywhere, chat. I say react, Andy. Okay, so yeah. So Al Sharpton and Byron Daniels, they traded barbs here Let's see. Only a 25-minute video. Let's see. This is the one.
was a
This is the one
law.
with the most. This is the one with the most views right now. From black conservative perspective. We've seen this guy before. I don't really touch on this guy very much, but yeah, he's a big content mill guy. He drops video after video after video after video. A lot of them. This is only 4 days ago, right? He is pumping them out. He's pumping the videos out. He is pumping them out. He does not care, man. He lets it fly.
Against black people. You weren't just talking about the era of Dwight Eisenhower and Harry Truman.
You can't refer to time periods there, Reverend. That don't make no sense.
I tried to tell you, Byron, there's no point whatsoever in debating or arguing with these clowns, okay? Because
that sounds like you're a cuck. That sounds like you're bad at debating, honestly. There's no point. I promise there's never any point in talking to these people. They're so bad and they're so lame and their views are so stupid and they never listen, and that's why you should never ever talk to them, and I'm never gonna talk to them ever or have them come on and try or criticize my views or push back against them whatsoever. I would never do something like that.
Because they're not interested in the truth. They are not honest actors, okay? One of the things that, again, is extremely frustrating to me, guys, during this whole fake outrage about Byron Donalds and his comments about Jim Crow is that clearly, listening to the video and reading his actual quote, he said nothing about Jim Crow being better for black people, but it has been spun into mainstream liberal media.
No, he said, once again, I guess the black conservative perspective has a big blind spot here. Once again, he said black families were more together, and that was better. And the Great Society destroyed that. So the Great Society was worse. So he believes the Great Society was worse for black people worse for black families in that context than Jim Crow. You have to get past that to answer this question. I'm not sure if they ever will, really.
Because they're essentially an arm of the Democrat Party in order to attack Byron Donalds as a black Republican who sold out to Trump. Ultimately, this really is an attack on Trump, and this is part of the reason why I really do think that Byron Donalds should stop doing these interviews. But I understand where he's coming from. He knows that he's correct. He knows that they're lying, and he's doing the interviews in order to defend himself, okay? He wants to defend himself. He's standing up to these propagandists, and I actually commend him for that. I just don't think that there's a point to it anymore, because the liberal media, they're going to continue to say that he said something that he didn't say, and only stupid people would believe the mainstream liberal media and their narrative at this point. So it is what it is, okay? But I'm so serious. The Democrats and this whole situation just proves that they really believe that black people are the dumbest people on the planet, right? Because you have to be a dummy to fall for this propaganda from the mainstream liberal media. And I think this is part of the reason why you're seeing black people move away from the Democrat Party, because it's getting to the point now where it's just offensive, right? These people are reality deniers, okay? They deny the reality of the economy, the reality of the border, the reality of crime, the reality that
there's a whole lot of yapping
is actually a good thing, right? It doesn't matter what era we're in, okay? But that doesn't mean Jim Crow was a good thing. It just means that black families being together is a good thing, period. They just deny all these things, okay? And again, at some point, there is no point to engaging with these individuals because they're not really trying to have an honest conversation, right? But I'm not going to talk about that topic anymore. We beat that topic to death. I'm actually going to talk about a new topic here that Byron Donalds is discussing with Al Sharpton later on in this interview, which is about police reform and the fact that Trump did not support the George Floyd movement, right? And Al Sharpton is going to confront
the George Floyd movement. What's that? What's the hashtag George Floyd movement? What does that mean? This is really funny because a lot of conservatives like to paint Black Lives Matter as just the George Floyd movement when, you know, people were talking about George Floyd, but also Tamir Rice and Breonna Taylor and a bunch of other Ahmaud Arbery as well. There are a bunch of other names in there of black people who have been who have had their lives taken or destroyed or harmed by society, but he's just like, oh, George Floyd, he's ugly and he was a criminal, he was drugs. Okay. Yeah, just shut all of that down, right? Shut all of that down. It's just the George Floyd movement, the George Floydists.
Donalds on why Trump didn't want to get on board with the defund the police movement that Democrats were endorsing at the time. And Byron Donalds is going to humiliate Al Sharpton, who clearly does not know what he's talking about in this segment. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Just this week that he might seek retribution against political enemies of if he's elected president. He also tried to link his legal problems to the injustices African Americans have suffered at the hands of the legal system. Why should black Americans believe that Trump is serious about criminal justice reform when he only seems concerned about it when it applied to him? You know the record. You're from Brooklyn, what he did around the Central Park case. You know the record that he was president when George Floyd was killed by police. He said nothing, had protesters move from in front of a church, made a speech denouncing the protesters.
I wouldn't even say that. He wasn't moved from in front of a church. He didn't have protesters move from in front of a church. He gassed protesters in front of a church to hold a Bible upside down for a photo shoot.
Has no problem talking about locking up his political opponents or homeless or asylum seekers, but he now wants to act like he's a victim of something. What is your response to that, Congressman?
Okay, so before Byron Donalds gets into this, the obvious rebuttal, okay, to Al Sharpton saying that, well, Trump's not serious about criminal justice reform, which again, let's be honest here.
That is true.
It's a great thing that Trump is not serious about criminal justice reform, because that would mean being progressive on criminal justice reform, and progressive criminal justice reform is the reason why these liberals.
Wait, you fucking dumbass. Wait. Aren't you all like these radical Democrats are letting criminals walk the streets? The only crime these days is being a conservative who loves America. Some black can just kill a bunch of people on the street and nobody cares. These Democratic mayors are just letting the prison open. They're swinging the gates open in Arkham Asylum. The Joker's running rampant, but he's black. He's the bloker. He's going crazy. He's setting off watermelon bombs in the middle of cities. Minneapolis would look like Hiroshima in 2020. Like, what are you talking about? Of course you want criminal justice reform. You guys talk about it constantly. What are you saying? What is going on? Yeah, anybody who wants to change what's going on in politics must be a woke liberal, communist, Joe Bidenist, Stalinist Democrat trying to make crime legal. Yes, of course, you see.
Cities have fallen off of a cliff, right? This is the reason why these cities are full of crime and chaos. This is the reason why these cities are being run by criminals. So it's a good thing that he's not on board with that, but Trump was on board with, I would define as moderate and common sense criminal justice reform when it comes to rolling back some of the harsh penalties that were implemented as a result of Joe Biden's crime bill with the First Step Act, right? So to say that, well, Trump is not serious about criminal justice reform, again, there's more nuances to that, right? Because I think it's a good thing that he doesn't agree with progressive criminal justice reform, but the First Step Act is evidence that Trump is open to some form of criminal justice reform. He's just not open to progressivism.
He's not really serious about criminal justice reform. He doesn't have much to say about criminal justice reform. Donald Trump doesn't have much of a policy platform. Donald Trump never had much of a policy platform. Donald Trump passed one policy when he was in Congress. When he was in office. I feel like a lot of people just kind of forget about this, but Donald Trump did like one thing when he was in office. There was like one bill of his policy platform that he passed. Almost everything that Donald Trump did was either a shitty tweet or using some executive power in a weird way that didn't actually do too much, or just kind of keep moving on as just being a president, just kind of going through the steps as the dumb fuck he is. Like, I know people like, and yes, he's a dumb fuck. He had to, it was reported on multiple times, he had to get his press briefings in like colored picture books, and they had to write his name on every page or else he'd like start to fall asleep during press briefings. And he literally lost a nuclear proliferation top secret papers from our nation in foreign countries. Like, yeah, he's a dumb fuck. He is a dumb fuck. Yes, he is a dumb fuck. I don't know what to say. He passed literally one piece of policy during his entire presidency. He didn't do anything. He just doesn't really have policy. People like Donald Trump for vibes. If you look back at the things people say they like about Donald Trump, they'll be like, I had more money. Inflation was lower back then. inflation was lower back then. He owned the libs. He totally owned the libs. He talked about the caravan. He stopped the caravan. Those caravans all made it to the border anyways, right? And they all sought asylum. Or they'll be just crazy and they'll be like Stephen Miller, and they'll be like he tortured migrants, and they really like that through the fucking what was it family separation policy and everything, right? He was really based. He was really based. Or they'll say things like the tax cuts, right? Or they'll be stupid and then they'll walk into the trap of praising the praising the Trump tax cuts, which also are helping inflation right now, and are also the reason why your taxes went up recently is because those tax cuts from the Trump's tax cut plan actually had a sunset period for people, I think, making less than $70,000 because he did so much deficit spending when he was the president, and then he cut taxes. It made it so that the deficit ballooned under Donald Trump. He's just a dumb fuck. He's just a dumb fuck that like totally owns the libs, and that's kind of what they care about, really. Outside of that, I don't know if they care about much.
To the point where it becomes lawless, right? Which is what all of these people support.
Well, first of all, during the Trump presidency, he also signed into law reforms to criminal justice reform, the First Step Back, which actually helped get a lot of people released who were imprisoned under the '94 crime bill that was authored by Joe Biden. One of the worst pieces of crime legislation that's really impacted a lot of people in the black community.
You and I agree on the '94 crime bill. I marched on it, and Joe Biden has said that it went too far. But Donald,
so again, why don't you ever hold Joe Biden accountable for the crime bill and the drug bill? Why don't you ever hold Joe Biden accountable for the so-called systemic racism that he's responsible for? Right? Every time these people talk about systemic racism, or they name some policy, past policy, because again, a lot of this stuff is not even on the books anymore. They're talking about, okay, none of these people actually went through this stuff or suffered from any of this stuff that they're boohoo-whine and cry about. But for example, when they talk about redlining, when they talk about, again, the crime bill and stuff like that,
they never went through this stuff. Black people grew up in black homes that were redlined, right? Black kids grew up in homes that were redlined. Like, just because redlining wasn't necessarily legal and still around when they were born, they lived in homes that were redlined. You know that, right? You yourself as a toddler weren't redlined when you went to go buy a home, so obviously it's not that big of a deal. Okay.
All that is a result of Democrats, right? That
result of Democrats. This is so funny because he thinks that like Joe Biden it just like kind of swooped down in Congress and then passed the crime bill just kind of like on a whim, right? When in reality, a whole lot of black people, specifically black more conservative community members, wanted the crime bill to be passed. I feel like a lot of people forget, but the Congressional Black Congress co-signed and helped put together that crime bill. It was those black communities. So it was those black community leaders that screwed over black communities. Yeah, Joe Biden was a part of it, and yeah, Joe Biden is kind of racist, dude. But to kind of just like hand wave the idea that black people like Byron Donalds, let's just not be stupid here, okay? Let's not be stupid. Black conservative perspective and Byron Donalds would be for the crime bill. If YouTube was back then, and if Byron Donalds was in Congress back then, this guy would be making videos about how the crime bill needs to pass to help stop lawlessness in save black communities in this country. Byron Donalds would be in the Congressional Black Caucus pushing for the crime bill to be passed. Let's just not be crazy now. Only people like me and Sharpton on this side of the aisle and further would be against the crime bill being passed. But all of these guys would be for the crime bill